Fasten your seatbelt. I am taking you for the ride of your life. I'm going to show you what this car can really do. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Hang on.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hold on to your butts.
Forget him, kid.
To infinity and beyond!
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor. Not a tumor at all.
So you can go ahead and ask me what you're going to ask me, and my natural response could be to get offended.
Well, fine, let's talk about it. Any thoughts of your own on this matter? Or is that your thing? You come into a bar, you read some obscure passage, and then pretend you pawn it off as your own idea just to impress some girls?
Just another American who saw too many movies as a child.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right.
You're listening to the 30-something movie podcast. One movie each week, 30 years in the making. Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the 30-something movie podcast. I'm your host, John Reed, here for another episode of the show. This time we are boldly going where we've gone a couple times before so far in the podcast to the Star Trek universe. And with me, I've got my fellow senior officers here on the bridge. Bo, what rank would you be, Bo? Are you Lieutenant Commander Bo Warmbold?
Oh, at least.
Okay, at least Lieutenant Commander.
Because if I'm not a lieutenant commander by 43, I think I should have, hooked up with the Orion Syndicate or something.
Well, TNG has those like elderly ensigns.
Yeah, but that's not, no.
No?
I'm not peeling potatoes at 50 is what I'm saying, John.
That's like the...
You're not the... Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if like Lower Decks and Prodigy is for try to get the younger generation into Star Trek, we're going to have a show with, it's like the Golden Girls, but Star Trek, and it's Star Trek Geriatrics.
Okay, well that's funny.
Yeah, and it's just the old. It's a whole group of the older ensigns.
I was going to ask if Bo, if you're saying you're not going to be the Picard blue shirt for when Q put him into that dream thing.
That's pretty much the image I have, and I don't think I could do it.
Okay.
And can I just take a second to say I'm really excited to talk about a Star Trek movie with other Trekkies, so that we can talk about the time Picard was the blue shirt in Q's dream sequence, and it doesn't even require a full explanation.
I wasn't even going to do like a spoiler alert for this episode. It was more so of a nerd alert for this episode.
Nerd alert!
Put it up.
Nerd alert!
Because I feel like when we talk about other movies, somehow we always bring Star Trek into the conversation. And now that we're on a Star Trek movie, I feel like it's just going to, basically the floodgates are open.
You're saying your basement is flooded? Is that what I heard?
On occasion, yes.
That's what I heard. I don't know. Anyone else?
In the Nexus, isn't it always flooded?
Oh. That's valid.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the Nexus, it's just a swamp basement. Speaking of swamp basements, Pat, how are you doing?
Wow.
Don't have anything to say. I mean,
how does one follow that?
If that's how you're asking, I think that just proves everything's really good right now, baby. I'm not sure.
Admiral Band,
baby.
There you go, Admiral Band Director.
Admiral Band Director. Well, I mean, if we're going to work reference, I think my understanding is in the minds of my superiors, I think I'm maybe like Chief Potato Peeler. So I think.
Okay.
I think that's
Chief Potato Peeler. You think pretty highly of yourself, don't you?
Yeah, that's only because Chief only in that they need someone to take the fall.
Yes. Well,
I think I'm the guy that kind of goes down to the underbelly and scrapes the space plaque off the bottom of the ship.
Space barnacles.
That's right.
Space barnacles.
Hey, but you know what? If we don't have a Chief Potato Peeler, you don't get to the point where you can then vaporize the vat that the mashed potatoes are in.
That's exactly right. Right.
You could have just replicated the mashed potatoes.
I mean, I guess that's true. Do they have? I'm gonna ask a stupid question. I should probably know. Do they have replicators in the movie era Star Trek?
Well, they had those synthesizers in the original, so that's a very good question.
Huh?
Okay.
The synthesizers, but those synthesizers were just like protein cubes, right? Like that's what that was.
Yeah.
They're like Soylent Green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Soylent Green is Vulcans. Yeah.
I was just gonna say Vulcan and Orion mishmash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a Vulcan Orion fusion. Wait, what is this made of?
Yes, have some.
Yes, have some.
Is there a vegan Soylent Green alternative? Is there a green Soylent Green?
Yes, yes, it's made with vegans.
Exactly. Yes. Indeed.
Do you realize, I'm not even sure we've been recording for 10 minutes. Do you realize how many Star Trek deep cuts, actually sci-fi deep cuts, we've already made in the first 10 minutes? Like, I think 90% of our audience is going, I have no clue what is going on right now.
Who are these yahoos? That's what I'm picturing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, man. And you know what I love is that I don't think we're going to do the explanation, because if you do the explanation, it takes the deep cutness out of it. But
right.
I made that mistake. What was it? It was a couple years back when if you remember, the gentleman Chuck Naffier was directing band at the other school. Mm-hmm. Good friend, great trumpet player, and all that. But he was a big Star Trek fan, and we were in a team meeting, and let's just say that. Well, it was not that long ago, so there was an age discrepancy in some of the teachers and everything. And somehow we were talking about some new tech initiative or something. And I just said, okay, but if we find out that Landrew is in charge of this whole thing, I'm out of here. And, everyone just gets quiet, and Chuck leans over and goes, Pat, you just like alienated the entire room, like with that reference. And it just got like that, like no one had the clue what I was talking about. I'm like, yeah, sorry about that. But that's exciting. Those are.
The sad thing is you've discovered since then that yes, and Landrew is in charge. That is the unfortunate reality of our situation.
Landrew might be in charge, or maybe the lowest bid alternative to Landrew. It might be Landrew. Might be, I don't know. John, can you speak to that? It might be Lenny. Lenny, the supercomputer, might be in charge.
I tell you what, if I remember correctly, Landrew's forehead is in charge. Didn't he have like the massive forehead and the Christopher Walken hair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The best part about Landrew is they brought him back on Lower Decks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they did. Yes,
that was outstanding.
No.
It was amazingly funny.
So this is the nerd alert. We're going to nerd freely here for the rest of the episode. This is your only warning, nerd alert. If you haven't already, visit our website, 30podcast.com. You can leave a rating, a voicemail. We have a Patreon link there, so if you want to find more of our nerdy stuff, you can join us over there on Patreon.
Yes, kids, we get nerdier, is what he just said.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if we get too much nerdier than the last 12 to 15 minutes have been, though.
No, that's true, because if you think about it, the people that keep us a little less nerdy, not here tonight.
None of them are present here tonight.
So, by the way, if anyone has a problem with what's about to happen, blame them for not being here to police this.
And honestly, I'm not even home right now, so I don't even have my wife texting me from upstairs things like, what in the world are you talking about?
Exactly. So, we are untethered kids.
30 podcast unfiltered right now.
Woohoo!
This is like the Deep Space Nine episode Valiant, right? Where the Red Squad kids took over the ship, and there's no one over the age of 18 or 20 or whatever the heck it is.
Yes.
And they're sailing around blowing up bad guys. That's kind of where we're at.
That sounds about right.
There's no one here over the maturity of 14.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We all need to have a cheer. Track cast. What are they? Red Squad.
Red Squad. Yep.
That's right. You know what we need? We need a climbing song.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
All right. Well, we are going to talk about Star Trek Generations tonight. At some point. I mean, we'll get to it, I'm sure.
Oh, we'll get there.
But yeah.
We do need to talk about it.
We do. All right. So let's get into some of the details on this one. It came out on November 18th, 1994. Rated PG with a runtime of 1 hour, 58 minutes. Directed by David Carson, who did several episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Writers were Ronald D. Moore and Brandon Braga, who did Battlestar Galactica and Mission Impossible 2. Producer Rick Berman, who did much of the Star Trek stuff, First Contact, Voyager, all those things. Dennis McCarthy was a composer for Star Trek, did Deep Space Nine, some Voyager episodes. Cinematographer was John A. Alonzo, who did Chinatown and Scarface. Peter E. Berger did Fatal Attraction. He was the editor, did Fatal Attraction and Beverly Hills Cop 3. Oh, so he's the one that I can blame for some of those weird editing things in Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Found him.
Okay, found him. There we go. All right, Peter Berger. Anyway, production company was Paramount. Budget was $35 million. Box office $118 million. Flick Metrics gives it a 59%. Cinema Score, the shields are down to 59% on that score. Cinema Score gives it a B+. P. played Captain Jean-Luc Picard. He was in the X-Men movies and Logan, one of Pat's favorite movies that I think he stayed awake through.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Just checking. All right.
Yeah, if Pat was going to stay awake through something, Logan would be it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie was, holy Moses, that was a great movie.
All right. William Shatner played Captain James T. Kirk. He was in Judgment at Nuremberg and pretty much everything else Star Trek. Jonathan Frakes was Commander William Riker. He was in Star Trek First Contact and Star Trek Insurrection. Brent Spiner was Lieutenant Commander Data. He was in Independence Day and The Aviator. LeVar Burton was Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge. He was in Roots and Reading Rainbow. Michael Dorn, let me stop there for a second. I was recently at South by Southwest EDU in Austin for the education conference, and I got to see a documentary called Butterfly in the Sky, a documentary on the making of and history of Reading Rainbow. It was excellent.
That's awesome.
So they did some showings, I want to say a few weeks ago, in one theater in downtown Chicago. But if at any point that ever comes to a streaming service or it's at the library somewhere or whatever, I would recommend, if you can find it, it is excellent. If you ever watched Reading Rainbow as a kid, it is well worth it. Like, my wife was always big into Mr. Rogers, and so we've seen all the different Mr. Rogers documentaries. If that is about your speed, if Reading Rainbow, Mr. Rogers, that kind of stuff is your speed, you absolutely should check out this Butterfly in the Sky documentary. It is excellent. So that's my little plug for that one. Let's see. Michael Dorn was Lieutenant Commander Worf. He was in pretty much all the Star Trek stuff. And what was I was trying to remember, what was the shampoo commercials that he was in?
Prel? Was it Prel?
Was it?
Or Pert Plus? It was one of those.
Was it Neutrogena T-Gel?
Yeah.
Neutrogena T-Gel. It works. Was it something like that?
Fighter pilot, too. That's the cool thing about him.
Yeah.
Wait, he's a fighter pilot?
Yep.
Oh, he is? I didn't know that.
Neutrogena T-Gel.
There we go.
Oh, you didn't know this? Yeah, he flies real planes. Hold on.
Okay,
Michael
he's
Dorn, having amassed 1,600 hours of flight time. Dorn he owns a Cicada Trinidad. All right, hold on. I'm getting to this.
Okay, so now he's really cool. He's got the voice and he's a fighter pilot.
Oh, he's amazing. He owns and flies an old F-86 Sabre that he acquired from the South African Air Force. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Okay, well, Michael Dorn winning at life.
Right?
Yeah, jeez, please.
Gates McFadden played Dr. Beverly Crusher. She was in The Hunt for Red October and Taking Care of Business. Marina Sirtis played Counselor Deanna Troy. She was in Crash and Death Wish 3. Malcolm McDowell played Dr. Tolian Soran. He was in A Clockwork Orange. James Doohan, who passed away in 2005, played Montgomery Scott. He was in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Walter Koenig played Pavel Chekhov. He was in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. And Alan Ruck was Captain John Harriman. He was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Speed. So I've got some trivia stuff for this one. This was, and if you guys, I'm sure you guys have stuff too, then throw in here as we're kind of going through. This one was the first Star Trek movie to be produced and filmed after Gene Roddenberry had passed away. So one of the things about this was, I guess some of the interesting things is, as he was less and less directly involved in Star Trek, they started to kind of go against some of his original wishes, and he was opposed to the idea of original Star Trek teaming up with Next Generation Star Trek. And so this movie probably might not have happened if it had not been for his passing. Found this little tidbit, thought this was kind of fun. This is the first film, at least according to the trivia, this is the first film to have a website created to promote it.
Yes, I saw that.
The website was launched at generations.viacom.com.
You gotta love the old web, man.
Mm-hmm. It was launched on October 28th, 1994, 3 weeks before the release of the movie. Its interface resembled the LCARS display of the Enterprise. It had some video versions of the movie trailer, which I'm sure took like 3 hours to download and watch. Audio clips, photos, cast and crew biographies. You could shop from a Star Trek catalog, a downloadable interactive kit with images and videos and a game, all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, it was one of the first movie websites that ever existed.
So I want to, that's just one, it's amazing to think about, because like in 1994, and I'm not necessarily a tech guy, but in 94, I didn't even process that there was like an internet. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just amazing. I also want to jump back what's your take on that, not having different aspects of Star Trek meet up? And here's my reason. We were talking earlier before we started recording about Discovery and kind of the direction it's taking Star Trek, and does it fit? Does it seem Star Trek enough, and all that? And it's really interesting because, like, in one sense, I understand where, okay, you don't want them to mix, but on the second level of that, I almost think that that's important to have some aspect of that for the world building, right? And I'm just going to say, like, Star Trek stretches all the way back to the 60s. So you see the old uniforms and the old sets and all that, and it looks very 60s. And then you do a movie that's 40 or 50 years later, but it's supposed to be before it in the timeline, or it somehow has to fit in with the timeline. I feel almost that if you want it to all look like it's from the same universe, there has to be some sort of overlap where that happens. Now, when you look at Star Wars they go to great pains to make things look similar, right? Like when they did the prequel series, it was like, oh my gosh, look, they've recreated Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru's house right down to the blue milk. Okay, so like it looks very much the same. Whereas with Star Trek, if you look at like Star Trek Enterprise and Star Trek the original series, and then Star Trek The Next Generation, the uniforms look different, the bridges look different. So unless you have that where suddenly, they're watching footage and they show a clip of the old movie, or you're sitting there and suddenly Spock shows up and he's very, very old, or unless you have that where the different characters come in, I think it would almost pull that world further apart as opposed to bring it more together. Do you guys get what I'm saying, or do you have any take on that? Or
I get what you're saying. I don't think you need it. I think that as long as you have some of the same visual language, because even if the Enterprise D looks very different from the Enterprise A, I still have a pretty good sense based on the uniforms, based on the kind of the layout of the bridge and the, all this other stuff. I kind of know I'm in the same universe, even if it's something different. Now, I say all that to say, I love the crossovers. Like some of my favorite episodes of TNG are when Spock shows up. Where it gets a little, and I still love these episodes, but where it gets a little bit of a stretch for me is when they have to do some convoluted stuff to get other people to show up. So I enjoyed the episode where Scotty shows up, but the idea of him being kind of like trapped in he was trapped in the transporter buffer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. When it's stuff like that, I mean, it's like, I don't know, just leave them in their own timeline. And this is a little bit of a spoiler for this movie. Same thing with Kirk. I'm like, do we have to like punch everybody through time to make sure that they can meet up with each other? And is that really necessary? And so if it's Spock, he's a member of a species who we know can live for 200 years, then it kind of makes sense. If it's the first episode of TNG, and it's ancient, crusty Dr. McCoy who's walking the ship with him, okay, I mean, I can kind of see that a little bit, as long as it's got a good reason for the story, but I don't know that it's necessary. I enjoy it. I always love a good Easter egg. I always love a good crossover, but would they have to do it to make you, to help you understand that this is Star Trek? I don't think so. I think there's enough about Star Trek that you can look at it and say, okay, this is different, but it's still Like I'm still in the same universe.
Got it. All right. I'll tell you, and I know I don't want to drill down because I know this has to be we can't make this an 8-hour podcast. I thought one of the most effective ones was when Deep Space Nine, they go back in time, the Trouble with Tribbles one.
Oh, I love that.
Trials and Tribulations, I believe.
Trials and Tribulations. I thought that the way they interacted, the way they filmed it, the whole thing. And what I really loved is that some of them knew their Star Trek history and, they knew the different, and then some of them, have heard of that guy, but is that him? No, that can't be. When they're all sitting in the bar and he's trying to figure, is that really the legendary Captain Kirk? Mm-hmm. And that I thought that was well done, because that's the thing, is that when you're thinking of historical figures, there's some people that, knows everything about the history and knows everybody. And then there's some people that are like, I've heard of this guy, but I don't know who he looked like. I thought they did a good job with that, but.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's see, a couple other things I've got here. So here's an interesting one, and we'll talk a little bit about some aspects of this movie a little bit later, but one of the things, I guess, one of the original versions of the script called for Captain Kirk to take command of the battle bridge of the Enterprise D and lead this into combat against the Klingons.
Oh, I'm glad they didn't try to do that.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know how I would have felt about that. I had some stuff in here about deleted scenes, but Bo, you and I were kind of talking about this the other day. So do you want to talk about the 2 deleted scenes that are in this one?
There's actually more I realized I was looking up later, but the 2 big ones that everyone talks about, one is the orbital skydiving scene that would have opened the movie in some versions of it. And you see Kirk doing some orbital skydiving, and Scotty and Chekhov sort of meet him there, and then they go to the Enterprise B. It's a fun little scene. You can find it on YouTube, and it's some of the YouTube ones are like the dailies. It is not the greatest video you've ever seen, but it is kind of fun. And then the other one is there's a little bit more to the torture scene between Soran and Geordi, where he actually does some stuff to his heart with a heart probe thing. And they cut that out. And what's weird is they cut that scene, but they reference it 2 more times throughout the movie. And if you don't know that scene's there, the lines are sort of throwaway and kind of weird. But those are the 2 that I always think of. There's an extended version of the Beverly gets dunked in the water. And I think there's an extended Scotty and Chekhov morning scene too, but I've had trouble confirming that. Those are the ones I remember. I don't know if you had more, John, but
no, it was mainly those first 2 you were talking about.
Yeah, the orbital skydiving one is kind of fun. There's actually Star Trek good at reusing its props. The orbital skydiving suit that Kirk uses, they actually use the same style suit in. It's probably not the same suit because I doubt it would fit her, but the same style suit in Voyager when B'Elanna Torres is doing some skydiving in the holodeck.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So they do call back to that, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. That's a kind of another thing about some of the Star Trek stuff is they get pretty cheap when it comes to suits.
They're cheap. Oh, the uniforms.
The uniforms in this one? Yeah.
God blessed the uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people are in 2 different uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
Some I think are in 3. There's at least 3 different on set because you still see the original front zip from the first couple of seasons on some of the background characters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hot mess. And they don't have the dye right on the purple undershirts.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are just so purple. And some not so much. And
I love purple.
It just that's another one of those things. Like, come on, you're supposed to be a big budget movie.
Mm-hmm.
At least you could have uniforms for your main characters.
I feel like the only thing we didn't get to see were the skorts.
Right. And at that point, if you're going to be a hot mess, let's go.
Right. If we're going to
do it all.
I'd like to see where those came in. I'd like to see if we're going to bridge the generations from old Star Trek to new Star Trek. When did the skort get added in as official Starfleet uniform?
I would agree.
I want to see the skort B and the skort C. I need to see Squirt Evolution. Let's see, this movie is also the last time Geordi is seen wearing his visor, because after this he gets some ocular implants.
Yep. I was commenting to John the other day that I feel like they should have just done it for the movies. They should have gone right, just get rid of the visor right away instead of waiting. But here we are.
Yeah. Let's see, what else was there here? Oh, I don't know if you guys know this. Malcolm McDowell, who played Dr. Soran, is the uncle of Alexander Siddig, who played Dr. Julian Bashir in Deep Space Nine.
I did.
That's cool.
Actually, I had read that somewhere.
They are related. Tim Russ was in this. He is Tuvok on Star Trek Voyager, but he has a small role as a human bridge crew member of the Enterprise B.
Yes. Yep. I noticed that this time.
Jeanette Goldstein, who you will know from Aliens and Terminator 2, was a member of the bridge crew on the Enterprise B. So, and apparently, I didn't realize this, she was originally considered for the role of Tasha Yar.
I'm saying, like, I've really, and I can't think of the actress's name, did a fantastic job as Tasha Yar.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, though, if you could, like, bring the Vasquez character into Star Trek, that would be awesome. And yeah, do the add the nerd alert drop, but yes, that would be outstanding.
Yeah.
And then when they go after Roga Danar, have her be the head of security, like chasing him down. Like, okay, I'm just going way down the fan fiction well right now, but I'm just saying that would be awesome.
Yeah, somebody said aliens, and they thought you said wormhole aliens.
Let's rock! I'm watching that movie tonight. Totally. Bo, I would recommend you watch that movie tonight too, because it's awesome.
Noted.
I don't know where you are with trivia.
Yep.
And I don't want to, if you have some, but I just want to throw something out that I noticed in reading through some of the reviews, but I don't want to interrupt if you're still. So
a couple things, but go ahead. Yeah.
Real quick, I was poking through some of the different reviews, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I wonder what Ebert said about this movie. I don't know if we have enough time for you to kind of like breeze through it and see what he said, but I at some point, you guys, I don't want to do the spoiler. I want you to just like take a look at it, start reading through it, and note it, and I'm just curious what your reaction is. Because my reaction was, it was like, did he watch the movie for content?
I have to admit, there are some times.
Are you looking at it right now?
There's some reviews of his where I just wonder if he even watched the movie.
Yeah, and this one, it's not overt, but there's one thing in particular I'm just wondering if you pick up on. Are you guys looking at it right now?
Yeah, I was looking at it.
Do you notice the thing that caught my attention or no? I was waiting for it.
Yeah, his editor really had trouble with that. Did he see this movie?
And it's nothing. It's not like total. It's just like I don't know.
That had to be like a copy and paste error by the editor, right?
Well, but then he references it. He references it later.
All right, I'm missing something here.
It's in like the second paragraph.
Should I just cut to the chase and tell what I say, or do you want to keep looking?
Yeah.
It's reading through, and he talks about how Captain Kirk shows up when young Captain Picard is given his first command of the Enterprise B.
I see. Yeah.
That's hysterical.
I see. Yeah.
And then you scan down, and later they say, and now we're 78 years in the future, and Captain Picard is off on another mission. And it was like, it's those kinds of things that, yeah, maybe it's just an editor, maybe it's, or it's like, are you not? And this is Ebert, right? Like,
yeah.
So anyways, that just kind of made me chuckle because it's kind of that's like a major plot point there. That's like,
Jefe, do you know who these people are you're speaking about?
Would you say I have too many Picards?
And I don't even think, was it even 70? It wasn't 78 years in the future, was it? Or was?
Yeah, it's supposed to be 78 years.
It's 78 years. Okay, so that time part was like, okay.
Yeah. Let's see. So I was going to ask a question because I don't believe I have read this, and I don't know if what I've read in the trivia here is accurate or not. Did either of you read the novel that William Shatner wrote called The Return, in which
I did.
Kirk comes back to life?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. So in that book, does it imply that because it was worded kind of weird in some of the trivia I found, that it was implied that the V'ger probe was a precursor to the Borg?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The theory that movie or that book wanted you to suppose was that V'ger encountered the Borg, and that they were that planet of all machines that is referenced in Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Gotcha.
That was and that actually carried through disturbingly to a couple of movies. Sorry. A couple of books, I should say.
Really?
Yeah, there were a couple others, and I think they might have all been Shatner's, so
okay.
Shocking, I know. But yeah, that theory carries over in a few places. Yeah, his stuff's interesting. I like his non-Star Trek stuff better.
Okay.
I think and I don't know how much of that he writes and how much of it's a ghostwriter. I don't know how all that works. But I do feel like when he's playing in a new universe, it's less convoluted and strange. But I've read several of his Star Trek books, and it was a good story.
Okay.
How he came back to life was a little...
Okay.
But
yeah, I
it's
remember
funny
seeing that, but I never read it.
They sort of... One of the book opens, if I remember correctly, with them actually... with Riker being in charge of getting the body off of Viridian 3 as Starfleet is removing its presence from the planet.
Okay.
Which obviously comes back in Star Trek Picard in a weird way. Because they have his body at the Daystrom Institute. But so, yeah, it's clunky and odd, but it does does do those things.
Yeah. One of the first times I think that we see a news reporter, we see news networks from the Federation. We have the Federation News Network, Starfleet Broadcasting, and the Earth Broadcasting Service. So clearly some of the TV or media networks have continued to exist even into the 23rd century. I thought it was interesting that they could have had a deleted scene here where there was an additional news network there that was a little bit more on the fringe, spreading some conspiracy theories. It was the Ferengi News Network, Newsmox.
Oh, boy.
You've had that one queued up for a couple days, haven't you?
I did. I thought about that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because there's got to be somebody that's spreading the QAnon conspiracies.
Oh, Lord Almighty!
Oh,
must
boy.
you?
I kind of must.
Oh.
I feel like I'm in training day, and I'm like, John, you've been planning this all day. I've been planning this all week. Okay.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
Oh, man.
What would you like to do next?
I'm impressed and saddened.
And terrified. It's King Arthur from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. You make me sad. Come,
Yes.
Patsy.
Come, Pepe.
All right. Before we get in any more trouble, let's move quickly on to our synopsis here, and then we'll do some major moments for you. In a galaxy brimming with danger, destiny unites two captains from different eras. Captain Jean-Luc Picard and Captain James T. Kirk join forces against the malevolent Dr. Tullian Soran, an enigmatic threat of the Nexus. Amidst battles that will test their courage, Star Trek Generations catapults you into an epic adventure where time is the battlefield and the future of the universe hangs in the balance.
In a distant corner of our galaxy, a secret observatory is attacked. A brilliant scientist is found, and a mysterious ribbon of energy where past and future collide is unleashed.
It's a doorway that we call the Nexus. Every ship which has approached the ribbon has either been destroyed or severely damaged.
Obviously, they were looking for something.
There's still no indication of why they attacked the station.
I must return to the observatory immediately.
There's nothing I can do.
Timing is very important in my experiment.
What the hell's he doing?
I have an appointment with eternity, and I don't want to be late.
Soran doesn't care about weapons or power. He just cares about getting back to the Nexus.
The star is going to collapse in a matter of minutes.
That'll destroy everything in this system.
Population?
230 million, sir.
Why would he destroy a star? I have to stop him. But I can't do this alone. I need help.
I know someone who can.
You say history considers me dead. Who am I to argue with history?
You're a Starfleet officer. You have a duty.
I don't need to be lectured by you. I was out saving the galaxy when your grandfather was in diapers.
Now, the torch of adventure is about to be passed.
Eliminate them.
Klingon vessel decloaking directly ahead, sir.
Target their bridge! Full disruptors!
Let's go!
Bridge, we have a new problem!
All right, let's move them out. Let's go. Take them out.
10 seconds to warp core breach.
All hands, brace for impact!
Let's try and cheat death together.
Warp 1, engage!
Star Trek Generations.
All right, major moments for this one. 10 major moments that kind of run through the plot for you here. We are on the maiden voyage of the Enterprise B. So this, I believe, completes the timeline from original Enterprise to Enterprise A. We had seen the C in some episodes of TNG. We got the D, of course, in TNG. And so now we have completed the timeline. We have completed the Connect 4 and finally get to see the Enterprise B, which basically is the Excelsior.
Why would you want that bucket of bolts?
I know, right? So in 2293, Kirk, Scott, and Chekhov attend the USS Enterprise B's maiden voyage, quickly becoming a rescue mission for Elorian refugees trapped by a massive energy ribbon.
Which, at some point, they mentioned the Elorians were fleeing the Borg, but we haven't met the Borg yet, and the whole thing sort of falls apart there for a minute.
We're not going to meet the Borg for like 100 and whatever years.
And only because we were sent a billion years ahead by Q, so how did the Borg get to the Elorians already, and where did the Elorians come from? I'll take my answer in the lobby.
In the lobby, okay.
Got a life. Sorry. Couldn't help myself there.
What my theory presupposes is they didn't know what they were doing when they wrote it.
Yeah, that is a given. It is. Sorry.
What my second theory presupposes is they didn't care.
Ah.
So when did they establish that they were? Was that when the original distress call was saying we're fleeing the Borg, or was that later?
No, they talk about it later. I don't think they talk about it because they never really talked to the Elorians in 2293. But when Guinan is talking about, when she's reminiscing about what had happened in 2293, that's when she tell Picard that the Borg had destroyed our planet.
Right.
And so they
so
were
it's
refugees for that. So
it's not that we had prior knowledge of the Borg. It's that somehow the Borg were close enough to us for those ships to have gotten there. It just takes a little too much.
Unless if the Elorians are ridiculously old, which they are, and if they were just traveling for many, 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 many years.
Sure. Well, let's go with that.
I don't know.
And then it was also, it's a little confusing too, because like Guinan's species, you see her back in the Mark Twain thing, and then you see her in the future and that she's got the other powers. But then does that mean that her species was from the Nexus? Or is her species Elorian? And they seem to know a lot about the Elorians. Hey, it's an Elorian transport and everything. But then her species has an air of mystery about it. So do you know about them and not know about them? And then how long were they in the Nexus? Have they been in the Nexus for hundreds and hundreds of years? Or were they on a refugee ship, happened into the Nexus for like in our mindset, like a couple of seconds, but in their mindset, it was long enough that they want to get back. Like I was, even watching it this time, I'm like, okay, so were they just on those? How does that work?
Yeah. And when will then be now?
Indeed. Yeah. They want you to think that even if you're in the Nexus for 20 minutes, for you, it could be an eternity because time doesn't matter.
Okay.
But yes, all those questions are valid because I completely agree. There's a certain what happening and yeah. It's definitely one of the, we need to figure out how to make Kirk and Picard meet. And so we have this Nexus. And I think the mistake here is the Elorians and the Borg, not the premise of the Nexus. Using existing IP that you didn't have to. It could have been some random bad dude. It didn't have to be some guy. Like what, with the exception of the exposition you get from Guinan about Soran, which isn't much except that he's a madman and he'll do whatever he wants.
Galaxy's full of them.
What do you actually get from him being an Elorian? What do you actually, and having Whoopi there was great. And the scene with Data is amazing. And we talk about that in a little bit, but what do you actually get from that when all it does is create weirdness and things that don't make sense?
Right.
That's the part that bothers me.
Yeah. For most of my life, I was like, oh, Guinan species is from the Nexus. Well, no, that's not how that works. Right.
But like, the funny thing is they could have done that.
Right.
And it almost would have made more sense.
And I really like the Soran character. I mean, I'm getting ahead. I'm getting into deep thought.
You're totally right, though. Like they could have. I mean, they could have done any of those things, and it would have been better.
Right. So, anyways, yeah, that was an interesting thing. I don't mean to derail and get into the deep thoughts, but yeah.
Now, I think this one's going to be a little more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Talk as we go, because it's just, you get to these points and you're like, but why? Why?
Yeah. So let's see. Kirk ends up helping free the Enterprise from the Ribbon's grasp, but he is presumed dead when the Ribbon damages the ship. And this has been a really terrible outing for Captain Cameron.
Let my Cameron go.
Because they have lost the Sausage King of Starfleet. And then we jump ahead. I don't know.
Oh, boy.
It's 2371 now, and we're on the set of Master and Commander during Wolf's promotion. Wolf.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
I think he's been called that by a certain Luoxana Troy.
It's during Ralph's promotion ceremony. We've switched him from a Klingon to
Lieutenant Ralph will be played by...
Well, perhaps it is a good day to die.
One little bit of trivia I did get about the ship at this point. The guy that I think it's Dr. Crusher hands the wheel over to, I think is the actual captain of that ship.
I did.
Oh, nice.
Okay, and you fill in the gaps, but he was the actual captain, and that ship is used. I mean, but obviously it's a beautiful ship.
Gorgeous.
But they at least at the time, or no, that because it's used in Pirates of the Caribbean. That's the long story short.
Yeah.
They use that ship for various outings and filming is used at movies, and that it was one of the Royal Navy ships, the Interceptor in Pirates of the Caribbean. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that is very cool.
Let's see. So after the promotion ceremony, Captain Picard
never underestimate a Klingon.
No. Captain Picard learns of his brother and nephew's deaths, deepening his sense of loss and duty. Died in a fire because apparently we don't have smoke detectors in the 24th century.
Yeah, I
know his brother was old-fashioned, but I mean, there's kind of you would think even old-fashioned in the 24th century, you're like 300 years beyond us. Wouldn't you have stuff that would prevent house fires?
Yeah, I was a little shocked that they went with burn to death in a fire.
Yeah.
I felt like there could have been other things.
Yeah.
Do you
Anyway.
think it was said? Do you think it was said just so Patrick Stewart could deliver the line in those terms?
A little. I mean, I think they were.
And then when Soran has the line, "Time is the fire in which we burn."
I think there might have been a little. There's a term for it, but I'm gonna forget. But essentially, backwards writing. These great lines about
rhetorical
time
gymnastics.
Yeah, you have these great lines about time and fire and such, and now we need to get there. You know.
Yeah. Let's burn people.
Right.
Burn. So Soran, who had fire. Soran had been rescued by the Enterprise B in 2293, and it is discovered that he is trying to launch these probes that implodes a star, endangering some planetary systems to reach the Nexus and get back there. Guinan, also a survivor from the original Energy Ribbon, reveals his obsession with returning. It is a realm outside of normal space-time, and it is a place where basically all your dreams come true. So he lost his entire family in the attack from the Borg, and so he is trying to get back there because presumably he is able to be with his family when he's in the Nexus. Soran plans to redirect the Nexus by destroying some stars, with his next target threatening millions on Viridian 3, or Planet Arizona, which is what I like to call it.
Remember, the millions are on Viridian 4.
That's true. This is Viridian 4. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
Yeah. Which I'm going to say, because I have started to rewatch this yet again, they totally stole this idea from episode 4, season 4 of the British TV show Red Dwarf, where the crew of the Red Dwarf, they are being pulled into I believe a white hole. There's a black hole and a white hole, and the ship is out of control. Of course there is. Why not? And they're being pulled into it, and in order to get themselves out of it, they have to plug the white hole by playing gravity pool with a bunch of planets. And so they knock the planets around, and yeah.
Words escape.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So basically, I'm saying the writers of this movie stole that from Red Dwarf.
I'm in.
Okay.
That's acceptable to me.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't like the way that I wrote this because it sounds really awkward, but I'm just going to read it the way it comes out here on the paper. Picard.
That's exactly what Brandon Braga was saying about this movie. I don't know why.
Yeah. Picard offers himself to the Duras sisters.
Pretty much how it happened.
That's a different movie. In exchange for Geordi, but he ends up confronting Soran on the planet's surface.
Even that scene was a little weird. Sure, yeah, I'm your hostage, but beam me down there first.
Yeah. Picard just wanted to do a little window shopping.
Excellent windows.
What were you going to say, Pat?
I got nothing.
I think we may have prevented a mild spit take for a second there.
Okay. All right. I just want to let you know on my phone, I did actually get that we are in a flood warning here in Lake County. So.
Oh. Well, there you go.
They've heard about you, John.
Yeah. I love this movie. After Geordi's visor leaks the ship's defenses, the Enterprise battles the Duras sisters, resulting in the destruction of the ship and the saucer section crash landing. Inside the Nexus, we get a reenactment of A Christmas Carol, and Kirk and Picard meet each other and realize that they are living in an illusion and they need to get out so that they can stop Soran and save millions of people. Kirk and Picard ultimately get out, prevent Soran's plan, and it is at the cost of Kirk's life. And very, very literally, Captain Kirk, you have the bridge.
Oh. Oof. Oh, man.
Oof.
That was true.
Okay. Let me back up. Let me back up and say that in a slightly different way. I've heard people say that the most fitting death for Kirk would have been on the bridge. This is just the case of a wrong preposition.
Mm-hmm.
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 Now, see, okay, God, okay. I have to say, I love this movie, but it's because of the love I can find all of its faults.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's so
I've
much
always
stupid stuff in this movie.
I've always known I will die alone. The man said this.
Mm-hmm.
It was a deeply held belief. couldn't we somehow have figured out how to have him die alone? I mean, he kind of died alone, but not really. I've always known I will die alone. In the beginning of the movie, you had him die alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then you ruined it.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Well, let's go. We're going to get into this. Let's go to deep thoughts.
Sorry.
No. You're fine. We're deep thoughting all over the place here. So
that sounds like a personal problem.
Yeah, it can be. If you take some Nexus for that, then you should be okay.
Yes.
It's for all day and night protection against frequent heartburn and deep thoughting everywhere.
Oh God, yes.
And now, deep thoughts.
I have an opinion on this matter.
Don't mince words, Bones. What do you really think? I like it a lot.
Wow. It's very deep. Thank you.
All right, deep thoughts. We've already kind of scattershot all over the place that I think we enjoy this movie, but we do see some of the faults with this movie. So yeah, let's go back to what you were saying, Bo, about the Kirk death, because I mean that's kind of the biggest thing about this whole movie is the death of Kirk. And I had mentioned before that I think it really depends on what viewing I'm on of this movie. I've seen this movie so many times, and there are times I watch it. In fact, I watched this movie just a few months ago, and I was like, man, I really enjoy this movie. This is a fun movie. And then I think I watched it again a couple months after that. I was watching a couple of the other Star Trek movies again, and I was like, man, this is a weird freaking movie. And then I watched it this time, and I was like, all right, so I do enjoy this movie. There's some really stupid stuff in this movie. And I guarantee you, if I wait a few months or if I wait a year and I watch this movie again, I'll be like, yeah, this is a fun movie. So it's one of those movies that is just, I love these characters, but I also am not immune to the thought that there are so many weird things going on in this movie. And if I was, because I feel like this movie is somebody's weird version of some kind of fan fiction. And if I write my own fan fiction of how these two captains meet, it is not, it's not.
There are better books written by William Shatner where the two of them are in that it's better. I can't remember the name of the book now, but there's one that both of the faces are on the cover.
Yeah, it's not it's not a mixture between being on a ranch in Montana and being in Oliver Twist.
No, it's like it's a fan fever dream, and you can tell parts where Shatner dictating, well, if you want me to do this movie, we're going to use my horses, and we're gonna. So I believe that's what they did. I believe those are his horses, if I remember correctly.
And his house?
Maybe.
Yes, I think it was his house too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
so I'm just going to come out right out and say this, and I'm going to say it. If you had asked me this a few months ago when I watched it that time, I would not say it this harshly. But upon this viewing of the movie, I think that this movie does a terrible disservice to both Kirk and Picard.
Yes.
I think it's a terrible Kirk story, and I actually think it's also a terrible Picard story.
Do explain.
Because Kirk is the reckless adventurer, and I honestly don't think this movie ever should have happened. Like, I don't think there should have been a bridge movie between the two, and
And if you were going to do it, there were better ways to do it too.
Star Trek 6, the end of Star Trek 6 is the perfect send-off for that crew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let it be done. Let it be done. Let them go off into space, second star to the right and straight on until morning.
If you need him to show up, he could be a hollow video. He could be a history file talking about. He could so many things you could have done.
Yes, like let Kirk be the hero that he always
bloody
was.
A, B, C, or D. No. That's the thing. You'd already done it.
Right. Like let him be the hero he already was. So that's where I kind of start my premise with this is like to make this a better movie. I don't want to say perfect movie. To make this a better movie for me, it doesn't have the meetup between Kirk and Picard. So then there's no movie to begin with.
Right. It's just a next generation movie.
Right. So there's that. Now, do I still enjoy this movie for what it is? Yes, I still enjoy this movie for what it is. But I think it takes all the best things about Kirk and it doesn't give him the time. I was even curious to look up and see, like, how long is he actually even in this movie? It doesn't give him the time to be Kirk, and it doesn't really give Picard time to be Picard. Like, we're spending so much time with Soran, and then so much time with Data, and so much time then with the Klingons, and we're not really dealing with... I mean, I guess I don't understand... I don't understand the handoff from captain to captain. I don't understand what this is trying to tell us about Picard's character. I know he's devastated from the loss of his family, and I know the whole thing about being in the Nexus was because he needed his family, but I just don't know. I mean, Kirk's thing through the old Star Trek movies was always, I'm getting old. Like, I'm getting old. It was always an age thing. And you don't really have any of that in this movie, or at least to a degree. You get a little bit.
The scenes on the Enterprise. Is there something wrong with your chair?
Right.
That stuff's great.
Yeah.
I also think
the best things about Picard is him being that very kind of like straight-laced may not be the right word, but the very stalwart and steady and diplomatic and, that kind of character. And I just don't get that from this movie.
Is this a product of the differences in the Next Generation versus original Star Trek? Original Star Trek was the trinity of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, but Kirk was the star.
Mm-hmm.
Next Generation, as much as Picard is the captain, it was an ensemble show.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know that ensemble shows translate to movie all that well, because you're just telling one story.
Right.
And I just wonder if that's part of it. They were trying to write an ensemble movie. So we got a little bit of Data, we got a little bit of Geordi, we got a little bit of Riker, we get a little bit of Troy and Crusher, but I think they both got the shaft on this one.
A little bit of Riker on my mind, a little bit of Geordi. Yep, okay.
But if you think about it, like, they wrote it like a long Star Trek episode. Everyone got their little bit of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tried to tell the big A story with Picard and Kirk and Soran in this arc, but it just didn't ever coalesce into something cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder if that was it. I wonder if they were still writing for Star Trek TV and they just made it 2 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be where it failed. If you think about it, the next installment is a little more star driven. It is Picard's White Whale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A very focused story. You have a star and then supporting characters. You're not trying to make it an ensemble. You have your little bits with Cochrane, but I feel like it is a white whale story.
There be white whales here.
What is this?
Yeah.
You're trying to take Kirk's race against time and getting old and foist it onto Picard all of a sudden. And then he says, thinking of retirement? Oh, not really. Like, they have that whole moment where he's like, don't let him do it. And he just said he's not. Like, why are we having this conversation?
Yeah.
The correct word, as dumb as it sounds, all Picard had to say to make that scene better is, well, I've thought about it because of like, he has had a death that he can reference in a way to say that, yeah, it's taken its toll on me here. And then he can deliver the line about, don't let them do that. Don't let him take you off that. None of that.
Mm-hmm.
But instead he says, not thinking about it. And then he delivers the line anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. It's unmotivated. That's the word I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, come on, guys. These are, and I do wonder if part of it is nobody in that writer's room has ever written for Kirk before.
Well, could be.
But
but we've had years of Kirk. Like, how hard would it be?
Well, I don't know. Agreed.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and I think I find it almost like you're saying we don't have enough time to cook in the what is this really about, right? Like you mentioned, Wrath of Khan is Kirk getting older and dealing with that, right?
Dealing with the consequences of your actions.
dealing with the consequences of your actions, right on down to, sir, you did it. I got caught with my britches down. I can't believe Khan got the drop on me.
And that's also why David's here.
I was just going to say.
There it is. There
Twice.
it is. And it's like, that whole thing. Like, I've got a son, and my son is like a grown man scientist now. What the heck? Like, all of those things. Now we've got in this, that was the piece with, if it's about Kirk, what is he grappling with in this one, right? Like, what is his motivation? Is it mattering? Do I make a difference? I haven't. And I think what you're saying is you could have made a movie about that, but we really didn't drill down on that. The same thing with Picard. Like, what is his thing about? Is it about getting older? Is it mattering? Is it the loss of the family? Or is it carrying on the family name? He didn't have a family. And you start to get some similarities of that, but they never really drill down and explore that. I mean, they could have explored that concept with kind of what's driven Soran in a dark direction, trying to maintain that family thing by using the Nexus, right? If you wanted to, but it's just, there's some deeper things that could be discussed and explored. And I think that came up when we were talking about The Final Frontier, right? That movie, that idea of your pain and how does that drive you, and would you want to get rid of it? And I mean, there's a bigger concept there to really drill down on, but they never quite do it, And you're just kind of, what's left is, like you said, it plays more like an hour of television, and it's a fun space adventure, right? Like it's a fun Star Trek thing.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, I had forgotten that, wow, we just see Kirk's death. This is a major death. And I'd forgotten that. And I guess I'd framed it in my mind almost like, do you remember the episode, the original series, where they each picked a hero? Abraham Lincoln came and helped Kirk, and then Serac came and helped Spock, and they had to fight against Genghis Khan and Colonel Green and all these different characters.
Yep.
But then they were really...
That's the TOS version of 3 questions.
There it is. So I had it framed in my mind that that's what was happening in this movie, right? Like, okay, Kirk comes back, and it's Kirk, but it's not really Kirk. So when Kirk dies, okay, but that's not really Kirk. And then I watched it again. I'm like, oh man, that's like, you just killed off the main Star Trek guy, right? And it hit. And I'll tell you, and I remember when it came out, people were saying, boy, like, we expected a grander death or a bigger death. And then, Bo, to your point, he said he was going to die alone, and maybe he should have been more alone. But then it was like, okay, now is that more befitting? Like, he was on one final trying to save the galaxy with strangers. He didn't know Picard, kind of all by himself. Maybe that was more fitting with Kirk. And I mean, obviously, there's different opinions on that. I'll tell you, though, the one scene that hit me, and it really surprised me, because I'm like, man, I'd forgotten. This is Kirk's death. Like, wow, this is big. Is when he's sitting there and they're having their final, kind of saying it back and forth. And I remember there was one review that said, really, his final word is going to be this. It was fun. And they're like, oh, come on, that can't be his final word. And I'm watching it this time, and I was playing it through in my head, and I'd forgotten that was not his final line. And when he said it was fun, it was almost like when he was still in the Nexus, and he says, okay, I'll go out with you. This isn't real. It'll be fun, or something. He kind of says some throwaway line. And I saw in his death when he said it was funny, he was kind of calling back to that kind of tongue in cheek. But the last thing, and I heard it was improvised, is when William Shatner, his eyes kind of go unfocused, and he gazes out, and then he says, what does he say? Oh my.
Oh my.
Oh my.
That line, man, boy, that really hit me. I was like, wow, that for me, that was delivered so well. And that made that whole death sequence hit so hard. Is just, I think he just absolutely nailed that delivery. I think, and that line made that death just so impactful for me. And it was like, oh, wow. He is scared, unsure. This is it. He's going it like, he doesn't believe in the no-win scenario. He had to say goodbye to his best friend and Spock, but they were able to bring Spock back, right? So no one ever truly dies, but like, here it is. This is it. He's done. And this is him facing death with only one other person that he doesn't really know. We know who Picard is, but Picard is a stranger to him. And he just, yeah, I'll help. And he that last scene where he looks and just, oh my, or I can't say it, right? Like, can't say it like the way he did, but I just thought I thought that was one of the high points of the movie. Not in terms of happy, fun, joy time, but I thought that really hit.
Yeah, I will say one of the other things this time watching the movie that kind of bothered me, that I when I first saw this, when I was a kid and I saw this, I thought it was funny. But this time it kind of hit me out, and I'll make a comparison to something else we're all very aware of, is Data's emotion chip.
Mm-hmm.
Watching it this time around, I was getting massive Jar Jar Binks vibes.
Yeah.
And it really bothered me. Like, and I've watched this other times, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's just emotion chip, and it's fine. It's kind of funny. It's, you know, you precious little life forms, and you know, that whole thing. Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah, that whole thing. But it kind of just grated on my nerves this time. And that, I think that's one of the things with Data's character, is that he's, from the movies to the TV show he just is, and I know he makes the comment that he's done all these things and he's gone this far and he can't go any further unless he adds this emotion chip. But I feel like there's been so much, they're ignoring so much of his character's development in Next Generation to just come up with an excuse to make him turn on this emotion chip for the movie. Because he has done a lot, and he has, but it's almost as if they're saying, yeah, that doesn't mean anything. All the stuff you've seen in the TV show from 87 until now means absolutely nothing. He doesn't get humor, he doesn't get jokes, and so he'll push Dr. Crusher overboard, and it just seems like a huge step back for his character for the sake of a movie audience that may not have seen the TV show.
And kind of like haha moments.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
that's kind of
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I feel like it could have been done a little more understated. Like, the bit with the alcohol is funny.
Mm-hmm.
The Mr. Tricorder is a little much.
Yeah.
The recall of the joke from Farpoint, that's actually kind of funny.
I did like that part. That was kind of
Except
funny.
I'm not sure it's a joke we saw on screen, which is a little frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been better if he called back to an episode that existed, like a line that existed in an episode. That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the scanning for life forms, that was the jump the shark moment with that bit. You're like, oh, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the one.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. I was going to say the one that would have been good is when they were in the battle, right? And yes, like if it was just that, that would have been a great tense. Or when the ship is augering in. Oh, like
yeah,
the one
that's good.
Yeah.
That would have, but it was just, there was so much, like you said, John, kind of like okay, here's the comic relief.
Right.
And Bo, I interrupted you. I apologize.
No, you're right on it. You are right on that. It just would have been so much better if they had been able to focus that effort a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's like, I always think of Data as being like the Spock of Next Generation because of his sometimes lack of emotion and his exploration of what it means to be human and all this. It would be like if you made Spock goofy.
Well, watch the first couple episodes of the original series when he smiled and joked and did all sorts of un-Vulcan things.
Right. But it'd be like, let's say you bring him back after Star Trek 3 and all of a sudden he's goofy, happy-go-lucky Spock.
Well, One Night with Savick will do that to you.
Well,
I think they handled the emotion chip a lot better in the next one with the Borg, where he's still using it, but like, in spoilers for, what was the next one called? Not Insurrection.
First Contact.
First Contact.
Spoilers for First Contact, but where he's sitting there and they're walking down the hallway.
Which is also the name of that scene that Spock has with Savick in Star Trek 3.
Hey now!
That is it. And he's like, I'm feeling fear or something like that. And he's like, Data, as amusing or as intriguing as this is, I think for the time being, let's switch the emotion chip off. And Data's like, yes, sir. And he does it. And he says, and then he's like suddenly back to being focused. And then
He
Picard
is
looks
like,
and says,
then he becomes a badass. And you're like, that's right.
Yeah.
Because that's what my android's supposed to be.
And then, but Picard looks at him and goes, Commander, there are times that I envy you. Right. And it's like, that is like writing for that emotion chip. And that's great because you need to shut that down now. I need you focused. And then he does it and he's good. And then suddenly it says how terrified Picard is. He's like, I envy that you can do that. You know, I mean,
and then they were able to pay that off later when she turns it back on. And they just,
right.
So good.
Right.
Yeah.
So good.
I will say though, the scene in stellar cartography, first of all, shout out for having stellar cartography. That was pretty cool.
What an awesome place that they should have used more. I know we got to see it again in Voyager.
Yes.
Which was good. But God, they could have used that more. It was just so, I'm sure it's an expensive effect as part of the problem, but.
And I'm sure like Captain Picard sitting in that room was like looking for Cerebro, but it was still a cool room, right? It was still cool. No, I really dug that, but I did really like that exchange there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that was the one thing with the whole emotion chip where suddenly, oh my gosh, he just becomes terrified, and now when he's in a firefight, he could have saved Geordi, and he screwed up, right? Yep. Like that was really a good aspect of having that. Like, oh my gosh, now I'm feeling fear. What do I do? But I really like that exchange with him and Picard when Picard is like, look, I understand. And the Data's starting to lose his temper. And for a second, I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna go ape and throw Picard through the wall or something. And Picard just gives him that dressing down. And it's like, okay, and then that helps Data kind of click back over. I really thought that scene was pretty good. I thought that was well written, well acted. I thought that was one of the
Star Trek at its best. It's that reflecting humanity back on itself. It's the adult talking to, in essence, a child. I mean, Data's going through a pubescence of sorts, learning about all these emotions, and Picard just sort of has to snap him out of it there.
To go back to Aliens for a second, he pulls a Sergeant Apone and secure that Data.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, the part where he's laughing, and you're right, it's funny because it is annoying. It's like, enough. But then at that point, and LeVar Burton, I was watching him, and I think LeVar Burton does a really nice job of subtly getting more and more frustrated. Because in each scene where Data keeps laughing, like I'm watching it this time and I'm like, okay, where does he finally lose it? And it's like, you can see it building up. Like there's a little sigh, and it's just super understated. But you can, when you're really looking for it, you can see how LeVar Burton is like, you can tell that he's acknowledging and ignoring. And somehow he's able to act like, I'm not an actor, so I can't even begin to fathom. But he's totally telegraphing this guy is laughing. It's got to stop. I've had enough. I'm ignoring it. This is me. Like somehow he's able to act to that level where we see him ignoring the annoyance, right? Without showing it, but showing it. And then finally he's like, Data, we don't have time for it. And then suddenly Data goes, and whatever he does, man, his face, it like becomes distorted when the laughing is like out of control. And you realize, oh, there's something right before he collapses. And it's almost a little bit freaky. You know what I'm saying? It's just
he almost has like a Total Recall moment.
Yes. Yeah. And I really like that. And then it's like the whole, man, it's like losing the queen on a chessboard. Wow, there goes down my power player, right? Like I said, here's the smartest guy in the room, the strongest guy in the room, the one that usually can science the way out of it. Now he's down for the count. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I thought that scene was really really good too. Like scary, like legit scary.
Yeah.
And it was the little stuff. It didn't need to be the big joke. That's the thing. The stuff you guys referenced, they didn't need to have that in there. They had enough humor that really hit, was appropriate. They had him getting too scared. They had him getting angry. And like he could just do the subtle stuff. Like when he opened up the torpedoes and they were looking in, he does that little thing with his hands, like open. And he didn't say anything.
Right.
Yeah. it's
I
really
had
like
forgotten
these
about
guys.
that, and he did it, and I noticed it this time through, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"See, that's good."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
We
You
all would
don't
have loved
like.
that.
That's fine. That works.
Yeah, yeah. But it was there were some awesome scenes in there.
There were.
The
All
battle
right.
scene was good.
Yeah.
A little
Yeah.
bit of reused footage of the exploding bird of prey from Star Trek 6.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
You got an exploding bird of prey. Go for it.
They should
And
have pulled
I'm,
a Monty. They should have pulled a Monty Python and had it explode several times.
It's only a model.
That would have been good. I'm gonna throw two things out there, John, and I know I'm keeping a weather eye on the time. You can just mute me and carry on if I'm going long-winded, but I like the battle scene because all of a sudden it was a new little wrinkle. Okay, they can get through the shields. You know what I'm saying? And man, we better solve this quick because it's not like we've got the shields up that can protect us. The one downside though is, well, no, I'll keep it in the positive. This really makes me love Star Trek 2 so much more, right? Because they really go extended battle where they go and then one gets the advantage, then the other gets the advantage, and it's like a back and forth. And I know the movie wasn't supposed to be one big combat sequence, but I think in a lot of the other movies, it's usually like one shot here, and then they figure some way out, and then they can destroy the bad guy's ship and they move on, right? And that was one thing. Just the 14-year-old in me was like, man, I wanted to see them go back and forth a little bit more, you know. And see, not quite as an extended like Wrath of Khan where you're in combat mode for an hour, but that would have been fun to see him go back and forth.
Or you've got Riker on the bridge, and he's like, guys, they're getting through the shields. We need to remodulate the shields. And then Worf just pounds on the console. I can't.
Yeah, exactly. But I did like it. And I like that idea of, crap, like we're in a bad way right now. But
It's a fun sciencey idea that there's a frequency that you could just fire through.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I suppose anything
like if I just tune my radio to like 90.3, I can get through your shields.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought exercise, right? Like, and my only problem with it is, how do you tune a torpedo? Phasers, I'll give you. Because that's energy. Right. You can modulate that, just like the shields. Right. I want to know how you are modulating a torpedo.
Well, you can perform surgery on a torpedo.
I know. I've seen it done several times.
Yeah.
But I want to know how you modulate one.
Yeah.
Phasers would have been better.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I hear you. Cue the Greatest Generation, the guy stepping up to the microphone and
in Star Trek Generations.
Oh, they're gonna have so much fun with this movie.
Oh yeah.
The only other thing that I wanted to get you guys' take on is the opening sequence where you meet the captain of the Enterprise B, and Kirk is there. I really like the way it establishes, Kirk's gravitas, just knowing what to do, having been there, done that, and I like the way, and just the way he's just kind of like, Captain, is there something wrong with your chair? Like, let the captain handle it. And then he's just like, hey, we could try this. And Kirk just kind of not going to work. And then he says, well, let's try this. And Kirk's he looks over at Kirk, and no, that's not going to work either. And I really like that. That's fun. And it establishes, hey, Kirk still has a lot to offer. The one thing I was struck with, though, was not just, well, let me go back up. Star Trek and a lot of the episodes in that really works on that whole idea of leadership. What's a good leader? What's a bad leader? Leadership, hierarchy, different cultures that have different ideas of what a leader is and so on. And there's some episodes where they'll bring in other captains and they're more effective or less effective, and you see different leadership styles. And it's not just from a military.
You might need to have a 4-shift rotation.
Yes, exactly. We're fine on a 3-shift. And some of it is based like in like the military hierarchy of rank, but it doesn't. I don't think it's ever wanted to be like a military type show, right? So I think a lot of it just applies. So you see different leadership styles. That was what I was struck with this time. For the first time, I'm like, I find that they kind of overwrote how the crew of the new Enterprise was inept or out of its element. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't see how that guy would have been a full captain being that young and maybe that inexperienced. I thought the actor did a fantastic job. I thought all those things, but I would have seen that more. If this is the new flagship of the Starfleet and everything, you're not going to put an inexperienced person up there.
No, you are not giving that man the command of the flagship. That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
who
I'm
is
just
the flagship at this point? They don't use that word, which is good.
Right. And
but
I mean, I don't want to
dead on. Like, that is a frightening thought.
And I mean, I really like that when they show, like in Deep Space Nine, when the Galaxy class ship showed up to go help take out the Dominion before they realized how, like, oh man, this is bad. Like, that guy showed up. He's an older dude. He'd been around the block for a while. They give him the command, right? When Janeway is given the command, she's like, she knows what she's all about. She's like super highly intelligent. She's proven herself in these different commands and different areas and all that. And then she's given a ship. I mean, when you think of like Cisco, you think of how capable that guy was as a leader, and he wasn't even made a full captain until partway through the show. You know what I'm saying? So like, you see him when he's all the beginning parts of the shows, he had only up to that point been a first officer. And you already see kind of like how experienced he was. And that was just the one piece that I felt with that writing is, I guess I would have liked to have seen it. I thought the actor did a great job. Either make it a junior officer. You know what I'm saying? Like,
captain doesn't arrive until Tuesday.
Captain, maybe that can. I mean, there were examples of that, like in Pearl Harbor on December 7th. There were captains that were ashore, and a junior officer had the watch. Right? I mean, that's a thing. You know, that could be just a little bit of easy writing. Like, let's say whatever. We don't need to take time going through it, but make him a junior officer that needs Captain Kirk's tutelage or guidance, or make him a full captain, make him experienced, and make it be like an actual exchange of ideas where they work the problem together.
Yeah, make him.
You know what I'm saying?
Make him appear like he knows what he's doing instead of being clueless.
Yeah, unless you hired him to be clueless, which he acted that very well, but then make him a junior officer. Right. And then make it like, dude, I'm struggling here. Like, the only thing I've commanded was like potato peeling in the kitchen, and now I find myself in command here. And
or don't make it the Enterprise B. Make it the Enterprise A, and treat it like a Battlestar Galactica thing. It's being turned into a museum.
Sure.
And that's why Kirk is there to dedicate the museum.
Love it.
This is not a starship captain that's running this thing. This is like a museum director. And then then the character makes more sense to me, because that always bothered me too. Is like, wait, this is the guy that's going to succeed Kirk as the captain of the Enterprise?
Right.
Like, because I feel like we don't see her very much, but the captain of the sea seems like a worthy captain of an Enterprise. And obviously Picard is, and Kirk is, and Pike is, and all these other people. But Captain Cameron does not seem like he would be a best fit to anybody who follows Kirk. It's going to be tough. But it's like they just couldn't find anybody else.
Well, right. And again,
so I'd rather do that. I'd rather have it be like, if they're going to say, if this truly was a passing on of things, we don't have to see the Enterprise B. Like, see it fly by out the window, and have this be the Starship Museum. And they are dedicating the Enterprise A to the Starship Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why things aren't working right. Or that's why, because they've stripped it out to put it in the museum. So that's why, not that it's not coming till Tuesday, but it's not a fully functioning ship anymore.
Yeah. Like I said, and it's just, there were some pieces there that were like, you have all the pieces, you could go any direction. Yeah. And right now, it's kind of the same thing I was saying with the plot. What is this about? Kirk struggling with age, Picard struggling with loss. Mm-hmm. But we don't quite go down any one hole, and it's the same thing here. You have many options, and right now you're kind of doing them all. Mm-hmm. We don't need to do them all. And you have the actors are great. I mean, the idea of the old crew coming back, that concept is great.
Yeah.
It just, that was the one thing that, like I said, you just gave a thing, and I was saying earlier, just, make him a lieutenant and captain's ashore, and I don't know what to do. I'm lower decks, right? He's lower decks. Like, just now I'm on the bridge. What do I do now?
Yeah.
So, anyways, that was just a couple things that I bumped on. But I mean, like I said, fun, excellent space movie, adventure movie, and any one of those plots, you could have had like 3 different movies and 5 different episodes of TV out of like the ideas that were presented in this thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
All right. It is time for 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Question number 1. If you were Captain Cameron of the Enterprise B, and you were going to borrow your dad's Federation starship for the day because he should have left space dock locked, which one would you take?
Oh, it's got to be the Defiant. Or anything in the Valiant. No, yeah, the Valiant class. I want something with some speed and some power, man.
Yeah.
I love that little ship.
Yeah.
Little.
Well, I still remember, like, one of the first ones that really imprinted was the Enterprise after the refit for the movies, right? Mm-hmm. So motion picture, Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock, that Enterprise, I thought it was cool. I know that now people say that it looks totally like early 80s and all that, but I love the way the chairs look. I love the way they do the lighting. I love the way the thing looks on screen, exterior shots, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the movie refit Enterprise, same as you, Pat. And that would probably be my first choice. But the other one, too, I have always been a huge fan, and I know, was it in Picard, they call her the fat one. I love that big D energy. So,
mm-hmm. That's right.
I love the Enterprise D. Like, that is...
Yeah.
Other than the refit Enterprise for the first 3 movies, that is always when I would build models as a kid, like that was my favorite model I had, was the Enterprise D.
Yeah.
But there will always be a very, very special place in my heart for the Wrath of Khan Enterprise.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're all cool ships.
Yeah.
Hey, and I just want to throw this out there. After seeing it crash into the planet and be destroyed, how much cooler is that episode of Picard? Oh, hang on, spoilers. How much cooler is that episode of Picard where they get that thing out of the museum? Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, like, I wish I would have watched this movie before I went back and watched Picard. Mm-hmm. I mean, or watch it just because that makes it that much cooler when you see the thing coming up like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome.
Question number 2. Data installs his emotion chip in this movie. If you could install a chip that removed one emotion, which one would it be? Which is funny because in the week or so that we were watching this movie and then I was coming up with these questions, as I said before, I've also been rewatching Red Dwarf. And there is an episode of Red Dwarf where there is a creature called the polymorph that when it attacks each person, it saps away one emotion from each of these people. So each of the different characters has either their fear, vanity, sense of shame, all kinds of, it has different emotions get pulled out of the different characters. And so then they start reacting different ways based on the fact that they don't have these emotions anymore. So that's kind of a funny version of it, but mine would be fear. So I think if I was going to choose one emotion to switch off, if I had an emotion chip that I could switch off one emotion, I'd switch off fear.
Fear's a good one.
Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to go skydiving all of a sudden, but...
Yeah, I was originally going to say something like embarrassment or or
You get
vanity.
embarrassed. You get embarrassed by things. What's that like?
Man, isn't it? This opens it up so much to like Big Dog, right? Like, oh, really, John? You still have fear? Huh? Yeah, I mean, like you could totally Big Dog people with their answers. Like, I love this. What's that? I remember being embarrassed once. I'm sorry, Bo. Go ahead.
You guys still have a sense of shame? Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I think that's shame or embarrassment or whatever whatever the right word is. But yeah, that.
I totally struggled with this question. This is the question that I like drilled down on, and I thought of like way too much. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Share your pain with us, Pat.
Yeah, I've been told that I can be a person of extremes. So I'm kind of like, I go, okay, well, I'd like to get rid of that emotion or get rid of that emotion. Well, that one, but like, yeah, it'd be fear. Okay, shame, embarrassment, like all. But then on the flip side, I think like, okay, kind of like Kirk was saying in the thing, like not in this one, but in Final Frontier, I need my pain. I need that. It helps. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, okay, well, but then the emotions do serve a purpose. Okay. And then I think back, okay, well, which one? But then I guess here's the unanswer. What I said earlier, when Data's going down the hall and he says, can you just maybe turn that chip off for a little bit? Okay, click. And like, that's kind of the thing. At any one given time, it would be really nice to be able to just switch off your emotions. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like whatever that might be. And whether that's arrogance or whether that's, like you said, fear, or whether that's, hey, embarrassment or anxiety, like wake up in the morning, hey, let me just switch the anxiety button off so I can get out of bed and get going. You know what I'm saying?
Are you saying you want to go through the process of Kolinar?
It might. There are some times, but I don't know. I wish I could give you any one, but I think at any given time, you want to be able to do that, right? Like, let's just hold the emotion. Let's get through what we need to get through, then turn it on. You know what I'm saying? Like and so I don't have any one, but like I said, there are times, most of the time, it would be really good. And isn't that kind of what we're doing? Isn't that what life is like learning how to control your emotions? And at any one given time, hey man, I'm going to shut off fear. Now, like you said, maybe not to go skydiving, but hey, I got to get through X. I need to turn this off to do that, right? I got to stand in front of a bunch of 14-year-olds and keep them excited and get them excited to play music and all that. So I'm going to have to shut off. I'm going to have to shut off shame for a little bit and embarrassment and be crazy up there on the podium to get them to react. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Some things came down at work and I'm going to have a meeting with the bosses coming up. I've got to shut off every single emotion so I still have a job at the end of that meeting. You know what I'm saying? Like I say that facetiously, but I think, yeah, like I said, I kind of went a little bit too far on this question analyses.
It's fine. It's what we do. Question number 3. Who or what is your favorite Star Trek villain?
This one's actually easy, but I feel like it's low-hanging fruit.
But you got to do it, Bo. Do it.
Let's Khan.
Yeah,
he's
just double.
So good.
I'm gonna try lithium that.
Yeah,
it's just, and I think that the more interesting question is who's number 2, right? Mm-hmm. Or even who does number 2 work for?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah,
I think that he is, the way he was written, the way he's acted, did everything about that character is the one.
Yep.
But you start thinking about number 2, then it gets interesting because then you have Q.
Yep.
You have the Klingons. I mean, you could go anywhere with that. I would say Q, but that could be a little bit of recency bias that we're talking about the Next Generation, and we're talking about Picard, and the Picard relationship to Q is obviously a special one. But I think Q, the thing about Q is some of his episodes are rough. But as a foil for Picard, I think he is a great villain.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'd say number 2.
Yeah.
Q.
And Pat, did you say Khan?
Yeah, it's same thing. It's got to be, for me, it's got to be Khan. And I mean, especially when you see, and he's the episode and the movie that he's in, I mean, he's intellectual, he's physical, he's, well, I'm repeating myself. I said he's intellectual. Like, he is kind of like, you got to have your A game and then some to beat this guy. And I know that in the movie, because Ricardo Montalban was suffering from, I don't know, a back injury or something where he couldn't move as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you read but I mean, and still, shout out to Ricardo Montalban. He still made that character menacing the way he was able to act through all that, which I think that's the key too, is you have this phenomenal actor that brings it to life, right? And that's something I've learned in doing this podcast with you guys. You got to have a great villain. And I think Ricardo Montalban makes him a great villain. But in the book, in the novelization of it, you know, he is just, the way he tortures people and the way he just absolutely ruthless and menacing to get his own ends. And at the end of Wrath of Khan, okay, we think we got him. And now even in death, right? Like, he's still almost going to blow up he almost still wins, right? Mm-hmm. Even in death. And it's just like, my God, we just can't beat this guy. And so, yeah, I would say Khan number 1. I know that final thing where he's turning on the Genesis thing, watching the Enterprise hightail it away. And he's just like, you can't, like, and is he still quoting Moby Dick at that point? At the very end, from Heller, I spit at thee.
I stab at
Or is that something else? That's stab at thee. Is that still Moby Dick?
I'm trying to remember.
Okay, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I mean, but he's still saying these really awesome lines, so he's fantastic. But number 2, I would have to say Gul Dukat.
That was going to be my answer too.
Oh,
Nice.
Okay. Well, daily double it. So
well, I'm going to daily double your number 1 and your number 2, because that was my same thing. And maybe just recency bias because I've been rewatching through DS9 right now. But Gul Dukat's an amazing villain, and especially because he gets so much time over the course of those seasons to be developed as a villain, and he's just as much fun. There's so many times in so many episodes where he's just as much fun as Khan is.
Oh yeah.
Agreed.
Oh yeah.
If he had a mustache, he'd be twirling it.
Oh yeah. But then there's times, and this is where you get the time to live with Dukat, is there's so much time where he's the good guy, or he's sympathetic, or you're like, okay, well, forgetting about the fact that he's a genocidal maniac, I feel bad for him right now, or he's trying to do the right thing with his daughter, or hey, he's going to be on our side, and you know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden, there's so many ups and downs with that character too. Yeah. Gul Dukat.
And Mark Alamo is just an amazing actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it for this one. I think we've covered as much of Star Trek Generations as we possibly could. I think we've geeked out on as many other Star Trek things as we possibly could. Unless we wanted to continue on and have this be like an 8-hour episode. I mean, I think we could just keep going, but for the sake of the fact that we're going to record other episodes of this podcast someday, we probably need to stop.
Yeah,
probably. What's our next Star Trek thing? How long do we have to wait until?
What have we got? First Contact was it 98? No, it wasn't that long. 96. So we've only got 2 more years.
Yeah, I say 98 sounded too long.
Yeah. Yeah, so First Contact came out in 96. So we've only got 2 more years until we get to First Contact.
Yeah.
Time travel.
At least it's not a joystick like we're going to get in Insurrection.
Well.
Had to go
switch it to manual. Good Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You gotta love Frakes, but that's the Fraksiest of things to Frakes.
That was ever Fraked.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say it's fun seeing the light up computer panels and everything in this one. You know, that's fun, is seeing something that was a show go into movie, and suddenly you get great the scene where Data and Geordi are talking about the emotion chip is lit so well. like where their faces are partly in shadow. It's up close. That is an awesome scene. And I like some of the more detail with the screens that they put on the bridge and all that is pretty awesome. The one funny thing though is watching them hit buttons to go, and when it was like they had to get out of there quick and cars like takes the warp speed and engage and go. Like you think it would be like the person at the helm would just have there be a throttle that you just kind of push forward, but it was like 4 or 5 buttons on various parts of the screen, and then you slap like the big light in the middle. Like it's like doo, 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 bam, and it's like really that much just to go? Wouldn't there be? I found that humorous.
Yeah,
that's good stuff.
All right. Well, we are halfway through our sci-fi month of April. Over on Patreon, we've done Starman from 1984 and the Patreon short Oblivion from 1994. We have done Stargate so far. Star Trek Generations was this week. Next week is Time Cop, the JCVD movie. Time Cop, and then we finish off the month with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And we've got our good friend Rob Perry is going to join us for that one. He was also on the Starman episode that is on our Patreon feed as well. So we've got some really, really great stuff coming up. I mean, we love sci-fi, so we are always having a good time when we get a chance to talk sci-fi. So thank you, Pat, and thank you, Bo, for being here with me.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Okay, live long and prosper, everyone, and be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies, and we'll see you back here next time, Cop.
Ooh. Ouch.
It kind of works.
It worked. It wasn't good.
Let's not say it worked. Let's say it happened.
Okay, I'll give you that.
It happened. John, is this your idea of humor?